Thanks for joining, and thank you, BSN, for providing this platform to have this really important talk about these subjects. And so, I just want to kind of introduce myself, just kind of set the tone for the conversation today. And I really want to make this casual. I want it to feel like it's just coaches talking to coaches. No slides, nothing like that. So, if there's any questions, anything that pops up at any time, just feel free to ask. But I really think it's an important time with what we're doing, especially. And so let's just have a conversation with this. But yeah, I'm been the head coach for the men's and women's tennis at the University of Puget Sound for just finished up my fifth season as the head coach, at a previous season as an assistant coach before that. And also, this book has been in the works for, gosh, 5, 6, 7 years, but it recently just came out last year. The Field Guide for Balance in a World of Chaos. And so I really view myself as a mental performance coach that uses tennis and sports as a tool to really kind of uncover these deeper things that are, whether we realize or not, are impacting our day-to-day performance in life and in sports. So really excited about this. So with that, let's just kind of dive in. In my mind, this talk, mental performance and mental health, in my mind, should be two completely different talks. They're two really different subjects, but the world we're in right now, they've been blurred and blended together. So if you're a coach, if you've been doing this for any period of time, you've probably seen the last few years especially have become even more challenging. And so we're not just a coach, we're having to deal with many more things around our plate, and the burden is falling on a lot of coaches and don't always know what to do. These challenges that a lot of people are going through are things I had gone through as a college athlete, as a high school athlete, as an adult, and I struggled mightily with those as I transformed into adulthood. And so I speak from these things not just from like, here's some great tips. It's things that actually have saved my life, and not to get all deep with that, but these are strategies that can be as simple as helping you on the field, or really transforming kind of some deep limiting thoughts that are impacting the student athletes that we're working with. So they are really two. So while they are two different talks, they are intimately related. Mental health and mental performance, they go hand in hand. You can't have peak mental performance when there are mental health struggles. It just doesn't work any other way. And so I do. I'm not going to throw a lot of statistics in there, but I do want to throw just a couple things out, statistic wise. In December 2021, the Surgeon General of the United States declared the youth of America to be in a national mental health crisis. So that's the Surgeon General of the U.S. saying that the youth of America is in a national mental health crisis. I think we all kind of have a good feel that that's going on, but what do we do about that, and what does that mean? And so 13% of kids aged 8 to 15 experience a mental health condition. 50% of those kids don't receive treatment. So a lot of times we're coaching on the field. It's not just about the sport we're dealing with. It's all these other things that come onto the court and impact the practice, impact the competition. And 17% of high school students seriously consider suicide. And this is a NAMI quote. This is the National Alliance on Mental Health, on mental illness. Sorry. And so that's 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for kids 10 to 14. I can't find any statistics on coaches, but I mean, 1 in 5 U.S. adults are experiencing mental health illness every year. So it's a topic that, whether or not it's been talked about much, it's a topic that's always been there, and now it's coming to the forefront. So what do we do about this? What do we do about these things? This is why I wrote the book. I struggled mightily with these things. And when I grew up, it might not have seemed like it from the outside, seemed happy, seemed successful, seemed athletic, got good grades. But inside, I was angry, frustrated, had so much rage. There were so many things going on the inside, and I didn't think those things made an impact on the outside. So as long as I put a fake smile on, or I just stuffed those negative emotions, I thought everything would be fine. And it didn't work that way. You stuffed it down, and then years turn into years, and you turn into an adult, and you don't know how to stuff those down. So that can turn into substance, and that can turn into abuse with those things. And so I don't want to get, go to on the negative side, but when I talk about the Field Guide for Balance in a World of Chaos, it just means we all have times of chaos. And I wrote the book because I was actually in chaos and didn't know how to find a path out. The solutions and the options that I was looking for weren't there. So I struggled with addiction and all those things. And so the whole point is the book came out as a solution, just a personal solution for me to be able to find mental and emotional balance. And then as I've shifted into sports, it's been a powerful tool for transformation in and out of competition. so that's really it. I had grown up. I wasn't given the tools to be resilient in life. I thought, in sports, you learn these tools, but really you just learn how to beat yourself up at an even more, at a higher level. If I didn't do this, well, then my self-worth is tied to my achievement. And if you don't solve those things, if those happen when you're a kid, a college student, it's going to be no different when you're an adult. So if you don't learn those skills at some point, you're going to struggle with those same things that you did as an athlete in high school or college. No different than when you're an adult. So I wasn't taught those tools, and honestly, hitting rock bottom is what forced me to go. I either need to I'm either done with life, or I have to find a different way of living. And that's really where the book was born. I started writing it 7+ years ago, of really trying to find balance in my personal life. But now with the world essentially being in chaos, it's like we all are having times of chaos. So let's dive into. So let's really dive into the book. And what it is I'm really trying to simplify. I'm really trying to simplify and mainstream some really complicated, challenging topics, and showing that no matter what is going on, you have the power to shift back with your mindset. So the balance system, balance is an acronym. So we're going to go through every letter of the word balance. And we're actually going to have a mental performance strategy that is going to revolve around those letters. So again, this is something you're going to apply to an athlete. So as a tennis coach, we have 25 seconds between points. So this is a system that can be applied essentially between points, where you're resetting every aspect of what's happening in competition. It's something that could be done at a turnover or at a timeout. It's something that could be done at halftime. It's something that could be done between practices. So this is a process that, yes, it seems very simple, but it is as deep and as you want to make it. I have my players, they actually put together a balanced performance system before preseason, and we work it through season. And so I'm going to share with you with how this works. And so I want to kind of start this really kind of going into understanding the power of the mindset. And I'm just going to I'm going to kind of throw out a few quotes here and there. But Aristotle talks about we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And so with this, to really understand the mindset, I want to dive into what the mindset is. The way I look at the mindset is that it's your operating system. It's just like your computer has an operating system. It tells you, when this happens, this is what I do. When this thing happens, this is the result that I will give it. And so we don't give much thought to our operating system. A lot of times it's on autopilot. We don't think about it. It's just we just go along our day. Situations happen and then we react to them, not realizing that we have so much more power in how we react and in how we deal with these things. So apologize there. And hey, right there, I had a minor technical difficulty. I had to be in the moment and not let it impact me. but anyway, so the power of the mindset. If we don't think there's any power, that our mindset has any power, these steps, these things won't help you at all. If you believe that your mindset is even just a little bit has a little bit of power and control in what you do in your day-to-day life, in and out of competition, then these steps are going to be a way that you can actually transform and make some big shifts with your mental performance as well. And so while we are talking about, the sports side of this book was written from a place of being in, I struggled significantly with suicidal ideations, with addiction, I can't tell you how negative I was. Essentially, I joke that I was 95% negative. The 5% positive was just a fake 5% that I would put on my exterior. Everything else interior was, if I make a mistake, it would just be another reason to beat myself up and reinforce those negative thoughts that were rolling in my head. And again, thinking that those things that I was thinking in my head didn't have any power, I was rolling through my life thinking that they didn't have any power. And then when you hit these big moments in life, these obstacles, you realize that the mindset is running the show. So with that, the mindset essentially creates our reality. It's the instruction manual that you have for everything you do in life, for everything, how to have fun, how to relax, how to not give up, how to be resilient. It's literally an instruction manual for every aspect of your life. And we don't think that those aspects are reprogrammable, but let's look at your computer. Who's still running on Windows 95? Right? I mean, Windows 95, you're going to upgrade your software every year or two. How often do you look at your mindset with that? Most people would say never. The mindset you were born with is usually the mindset you're going to be living with. And that mindset was created by your parents or who raised you, and then who raised them. It's going back generations. If you have these negative or lack of resilient type of beliefs, these limiting beliefs, if your great grandmother or grandfather had those, unless those were broken out of and were shifted, you're dealing with the same operating system that they have. So the most important tool you can have to shift your mindset is to be conscious of the things that you're telling yourself. And so that's why we're going to step into that first letter. So balance, the first letter of that is going to be B. Break out of your negative mindset. So in the book, I call it break out of your old limiting mindsets. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the point is you have to take inventory of every single thing you are telling yourself. That's why I call it a field guide. It's not like, hey, I'm going to read this book when I'm in a good mood and I feel happy. And we have to shift when life is hitting us in the mouth. We just had a turnover. We just made a mistake. We have to get ready for the next play, the next point. We don't have that luxury to stay in the negative. And if we do dwell in the negative, that negative is going to be the basis of our mindset for that next point or that next game. So what power are you going to give that last moment? And most of the time we're giving power to the last moment, the last day, the last week, the last year. How many times are you holding on to something that somebody, a mistake or somebody hurt you years ago? And what good is that doing holding on to that? But we don't know how to let go. And we don't think that those things play an impact in our day, but it does. It plays the biggest impact. So you need to understand the negative stuff you're telling yourself. You got to have a notebook in your bag, in your anywhere when you have a timeout, when you have a time to write this down. Write down the negative stuff you're telling yourself. And it's the same stuff you're going to tell yourself in life. When you hit an obstacle in life, it's the same negative stuff. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Whatever you're telling yourself, you have to write it down and be very specific. Like, let's say I missed a forehand return. I go, my forehand returns are awful. I'm never going to get a forehand return. You have to write that specific word down, and we're going to use those same words when we create a new mindset. So it's very important to take inventory of all the negative garbage you're telling yourself. Everything. And you don't take note of these when everything's going great. You take note of these when everything is hit, when the crap is hitting the fan. And so that's the part, and you're going to need to collect these for weeks. It's going to be an ongoing process. I'm continuing to collect these negative things that pop out of my head. It's like peeling a layer of an onion. You think you're fine and think you're great, and then you peel that layer, and then a whole other thing comes up that you have to learn how to deal with. It's a journey. It's not like, oh, I figured out how to be mentally tough. Great, problem solved. It's a continuous journey of how to get yourself, when you get out of balance, how do you learn how to reshift back? And no matter what the situation, it's not giving it that power to get you down. And so here's the next step is adjust your reaction. And we think of like, we think of reactions as, we think, well, that's no big deal. I can't control this. This happens to me, so I just get mad, or I just get like this, or whatever it is. Those are reactions that you've been training to be an expert at. So when something goes bad, if things don't go your way and you just fall down and crumble and give up, you've been training to be an expert at giving up. So those reactions we don't think can be molded. Those absolutely can be moldable. And so the reactions keep you stuck in a pattern. So if you constantly have this pattern and you have the same reaction to it, that's going to give you the same checklist of like things that you're going to go through. You're going to get down on yourself. You're going to go low. You're going to have these negative mindsets that are only going to create more of that negative in your reality. And so so that's really where it comes down to. We don't have to like these things that are happening to us, but you have to adjust that reaction. If you're in a mindset of feeling like you're less than, and then you're trying to then play the next point or the next game or the next thing from that same negative mindset, you're not going to get your best results if you think that you're less than trying to create your best. It's just not possible. So how much power are we going to give to that last mistake? And it's hard. We're used to holding on to it. We're used to figuring out whose blame is it? Who can I blame for the reason I made this mistake? This person, I did this, or they did this to me, or they gave me a bad call, or the umpire did this, or the ref did this. How much power are you going to give that to get that out of your mindset, to get you out of your zone? Because that's what it's doing. It's getting you out of your zone. Some of the best athletes in the world aren't the best at their sport. They're just the most mentally resilient. And that's what's fascinating. And so we got to adjust our reaction. And the next part of that is going to be the L, living in the moment. Now, that isn't like some YOLO thing, like, hey, let's just forget it. Nothing matters. Like, it couldn't be any more opposite of that. Living in the moment. And what I say with that is I say, let's just stop time traveling. And what I mean by time traveling is when you're not living in the moment, if you start living in the past, you're creating depressive thoughts. It's, oh, I should have done this. God, I could have done this. Why didn't I do that? All you are doing is planting these seeds of negative, depressive thoughts or limiting mindsets. Literally, let's look at it like you're harvesting a crop. Let's say you're planting corn. Let's say you're planting beans. Let's say you're planting poison ivy. All of those things are going to grow, but it's what are you planting? So if you're instantly going negative and go, see, look, another example of me not being able to do it. I choked again. What do you think is going to happen? Situations that reinforce you saying, wow, I'm choking again. So living in the moment, it's about taking the power back and not identifying with what just happened. You aren't that last mistake. But how many players, how many athletes are you working with that they are identifying with that last mistake that they can't even think about taking that next step? And so worrying also about the future creates anxiety. So, I mean, how many young adults right now are rolling around with tons, buckets of anxiety? Because they're worrying about the future, the unknown. We're trying to control all these aspects of our future. Can't control that. The only thing that we have is the now. Yet most people are never living in the now. They're living in tomorrow. They're living in yesterday or the next point, the past point. So what do you expect if you think your mindset actually creates any small glimmer of your reality and you're focusing on this? What do you think you're going to get? More chaos. So it's really about honestly taking accountability of everything that's going in your head. And a lot of players aren't going to want to do that. They're not going to want to do that because it's too painful. It's too tough to hear the things you're telling yourself. But that is the same thing that's going to be running the ship when they're an adult, when they're a parent, when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So you got to, if we don't solve it now, we're going to have a lack of resiliency with adults. It's going to be no different. And so all those things are great. Well, great. How do I stay present when I'm angry? How do I stay present when I'm pissed off? Like these are great advice. Thanks. I need to just be in the moment. And so what you have to do is you have to take the power of like, what do you do when you're trying to get stronger? You get in the weight room. So mentally, how do you get mentally stronger? So I coach a sport that they say is 70, 80, 90% mental with tennis. And most sports, I mean, you're going to have different numbers of that. When you get to a high level, in my mind, it essentially is all mental. It's not even the sport you're playing. It's all mental. So what do we do with those things? How do we get back to the mental side? If you don't work on the mental side, how do you expect to get mental results? We say, well, we got to perform on the weekend, or we got to perform during games. But if you don't practice those things during the practice, all you're going to do is create more opportunity to be frustrated in the competition. So how do you stay present when you're angry? How do you live in the moment when you're angry? We're going to go through these next steps. The next step is going to be acceptance, but it's going to be not identifying with those things. And what I see with, even as coaches, man, you see a lot of coaches flipping out, getting mad and angry because they're identifying with their team's win and loss. So they scream and yell at their players because they're making them look bad because they're not winning. So we don't realize the power or the negative that it can have of placing our self-worth on outcome-based situations. If I beat this team, I'm a good coach. If my player beats those players, they're a good player. I've coached them well. They've done well. But there can also be amazing growth in doing well. So you need to change the metrics of the way you talk to yourself. And so having your self-worth tied to outcome is going to be huge. And that takes reprogramming it. That takes literally everything. Happy people have a different language and vocabulary than unhappy people. Mentally tough people talk differently to themselves. I'm talking the self-talk, the way they talk to the world. You don't hear people, high performance people typically saying, God, I suck. I'm no good. You don't hear that. It just doesn't exist in their mindset. That's not an accident that their results show that. So how can we take this high performance mindset stuff and then have this take this to every level of competition we're doing? Because here's the other thing too, is that it's tied to these deeper things. It's not just like I'm tying this to like my sports. It's tied to deeper self-worth issues. So that's where the mental performance is tied to the mental health. So if I think I failed my team, if I think I've let my team down, this then triggers these deep self-worth issues of being less than. And that's the part that these tools can help you shift out of that mindset. The longer someone dwells in thinking they've let their team down or thinking that they've let these other things down, they need to realize that they have the power. It's not anything you can do. You have to just show them the tools that they can shift out of that. And again, the only reason I've become a minor expert in this is that I've gone through all these things. I've gone to literally where I've been minutes away from ending my life. And I know that the only thing that shifted was reprogramming the way that I talk and view myself, because the next letter is acceptance. It's A. And in my book, it's actually agape. It's unconditional love. I simplify it to call it acceptance with my mental performance plan. But essentially, acceptance is agape and unconditional love of not just others. Others is great. That's fantastic. But I'm talking about acceptance and unconditional love of yourself. And I want you to actually let that sink in for a second. We're willing to forgive other people. A lot of times we'll forgive other people. We'll forgive our players. That's just a mistake. No big deal. How willing are you to accept your mistakes? But it sounds easy, like, but how much are you holding on to things? Are there things you're holding on to, mistakes you've made years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Guarantee there's people listening right now that are holding on to things like that. And that isn't an issue. And again, so we can talk into that of what that does for the mindset. The mindset is just going to create more situations reinforcing what you're telling yourself. You might think, well, that's these other things are doing that. No, let's say that your mindset is actually drawing and magnetizing these situations that you don't think you want to you, because that's what you're actually quietly telling yourself. So acceptance, again, it doesn't mean you have to like what's happening, but you have to accept it. So Rafael Nadal had a big quote, big tennis player, about acceptance. And basically he had this big match. He said, he instantly accepted the loss, and he was going into how hard he was and what he was going to do and how he didn't like it. But it was a profound statement, and most people might not take notice of that, but it's the acceptance of that. Without acceptance, you're stuck, you're frozen. You're not going to create a mindset or a strategy or a plan or a play that's going to be anything other than the mindset that you're in. So you're only hurting yourself. And so what that acceptance does is that it allows you to be in a different place. Lack of acceptance is a low vibe mindset. And again, I don't want to get all techie here, but like every thought has a certain vibration. Everything has a certain frequency and vibration. It's higher vibe, low vibe. That's where those terms come from. So every thought has a higher frequency or vibration associated to it and a lower vibe. So lack of acceptance, all those things, low vibe. Man, like people will just don't want to be around you, and you don't know why, but like you're just thinking all this negative stuff. So the acceptance, you just got to figure out how to accept that. You don't like it, but you got to figure out the next plan to go to take your next step. And so that really takes us to Newton's third law, the N. Now, again, Newton's third law, I'm not going to get all sciencey here. I'm going to really kind of simplify this. And so for Newton's third law, what is that? That's for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So I think we all agree the like universal laws are something that we all would agree that we understand. Maybe not fully understand, but we agree they're a thing. Gravity. We don't think we're debating gravity. So Newton's third law: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the only difference with that is that your thoughts aren't free from this. We believe that applies to a teeter-totter and things like that, but it applies to your mindset. So let's think about this. If I'm thinking negative all day long, or if I'm judging somebody all day long, it has to come back to me. Even if I don't vocalize it, situations will come back to me that reinforce the way I'm feeling. Now, we might not think, I think, well, no, yeah, that's, nah. That's okay. When you're ready to fully buy into the fact of, if you could actually take a step-by-step analysis, like from the first chapter of the book of breaking out of your negative mindsets, if you actually take inventory of everything you say and everything you're thinking on a daily basis, you'll actually see that it's actually aligns pretty similarly to the life you're living. You can blame all these other cast of characters in your life, but quite honestly, it's the mindset, it's the beliefs. And again, whether or not we understand how this is happening or why it's happening. So getting control of these aspects of our mindset is only going to allow us to be able to take control back. And this doesn't mean negative things aren't going to happen. You know, I've been on this path for a decade, and I went from literally waking up absolutely miserable with a pit in my stomach, anxiety attack every morning, to now I wake up a completely different shift in life. That doesn't mean negative things or tough challenges don't happen. It just means that I have the ability to be able to shift back into that balance and not let things spiral. You ever seen one mistake turn into two, turn into three, turn into a career? How many athletes have you seen, professional or otherwise, in your sport, that have had everything going for them, and then for some reason it seemed like there was just this choke. I believe that choking doesn't happen by accident. If your internal self-worth doesn't align with your actions on the court, you will self-sabotage. You will self-sabotage this. You're like, well, how can I make the mistake? I've done that a million times. Because deep down, you actually don't believe you're worthy of that. So that's why if we don't reprogram those deep, deep, deep self-worth things, and I'm not saying this takes the replacement of a mental health professional or anything like that. I want to make that really clear, is that there, if you look at a lot of these statistics, 50% of the children that have experienced a mental health condition don't receive treatment. So whether we like it or not, coaches are smack dab in the middle of this. We're having to deal with the repercussions of these mental health challenges. And so this isn't like a fix-all for everything, but this is a triage. The word balance can be a Band-Aid to help you deal with these things. I was on a college team where I had one of the years I played, top high level player had a breakdown. And these were things that was never talked about. This was in the 90s. We didn't talk about, it wasn't discussed. We just kind of gave some space and was just kind of whispering, and those things aren't healthy. Stuffing it down. I grew up in the 80s and 90s where, if you felt bad about something, you stuff it down. And really that's just like, taking the batteries out of a smoke detector. Yeah, the alarm isn't blaring anymore, but man, everything is still, the kitchen's still on fire. And that's really where I view the mindset. You can ignore it all you want. You can ignore your mindset all you want, but it's creating the life, the lens and how you view this life. And so anything negative on that, whether it's sports, life, business, doesn't matter. You can shift any aspect of that. And so when you understand that Newton's third law, what I send out is coming back to me. Man, you can have all the excuse you want in the world to be mad, but if you send that anger out, you're going to get more situations that reinforce why you should be mad. So it only is harming you. So it's amazing natural balance of when you look at these universal laws. You're like, okay, if I send out, let's say I shift my mindset. I'm like, hey, I'm resilient. I'm this, I'm all these positive, amazing things. It works the same way too. So if you break out of your negative mindset and create a positive mindset, you're going to get these same positives coming back to you. So it is about having to shift and reprogram. If you're used to saying this about yourself, slowly but surely you have to start talking differently. It's not going to happen in a second. Man, it's taken me a decade to like learn how to love myself and accept myself and not absolutely hate the person that I viewed in the mirror. But it's possible. It took me decades and years to get to that place, to reinforce those negative mindsets. But even quicker, when you realize that you have the power, you can shift through these things as soon as and as quickly as you allow yourself. So Newton's third law is a big one. But really where this comes in at is applying what you can do with Newton's third law is the next letter. It's the C. It's creating a new mindset. It's create your new mindset. So let's take all the power, everything we've done before. We're gonna realize that the things I send out are gonna come back to me. So if we now can take a look at our new mindset, we want to say it, think it, and believe it. Okay. And so so my book, I'll have quotes to kind of start every chapter. And so in the create a new mindset chapter, it's an Einstein quote, Albert Einstein, and it says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Again, when we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So when you create a new mindset, you are originating an entirely new operating system for your life. Okay. Every mindset has its own unique code or language. And the mindset is going to be created and reinforced through those very words. Your vocabulary and how you use those words to communicate to yourself and the world will either keep you where you're at, or it can be the missing pieces that enable you to stop holding yourself back from so much of your life. Your mindset is what robbed you of your balance and joy from the day-to-day, but it's also what's going to be able to get you back on track. So balanced people speak, think, act differently than those out of balance. Happy people speak, think, and act differently than sad people. So it really is about aligning that mindset to what you want. So how do we do this? How do we take mental performance now? How do we take our mental performance to the next level, even if we're struggling and having some challenges? So this creating a new mindset, we're going to take what we've done, and this is why the notebook in your bag is going to be so important. So you're going to take all the stuff down that you've written down, and this is going to be an ongoing process. So you're going to write all these stuff down. Let's say and get specific. Let's say I've wrote down, hey, I'm no good, or I choke when pressure's on. All these things that I've written down on my list. When I create a new mindset, I know that those things are running the show. That's on autopilot more than I realize it or not. So I need to collect all these things, and let's just say, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to flip it. Our new mindset is going to be the opposite of the way we're talking to ourselves. Okay. So let's say I go, for sake of being simple with this, I'm not good enough. Okay. I'm not good enough. Let's say that's one of the limiting mindsets. So instead of going, oh man, I can't believe I'm saying this negative stuff. So a lot of times people will look at this and go, man, I'm really negative. Man, you're just reinforcing more negative. No, be thankful. Man, I'm so thankful that I'm seeing these negative things that I'm going to shift and break out of. It's actually exciting. You're creating your own instruction manual and on how to create your mindset. It's not somebody else telling you how to live your life, what you want to do. You have all the power in this. And that's what's the coolest thing. So you're going to take inventory and you're going to say, let's say I'm not good enough. What is the opposite of I'm not good enough? Lots of different ways you could look at it. But one thing it has to be, it can't be, I hope to be, I want to be. You need to speak it specifically as if it already is. So it's not, one day, golly jeepers, I hope I'll be good enough. So instead of going, I am not good enough, I am worthy. That's one of my favorite ones, being worthy. I'm worthy, or I'm good enough. So let's just say I'm worthy. So now your mindset, your mantra, your affirmation, it doesn't matter what you want to call it. It's I am worthy. So if you know that you are constantly telling yourself you're not good enough, let's take the tennis court, for example. If you're telling yourself after every mistake this type of limiting belief, I guarantee you're saying those things off the court, in the classroom, at work, with your friends, and it's impacting every day of your life. You're projecting on it to so many different situations that you don't even realize you are. So you're telling yourself, you're reinforcing this negative all day long. So what do? You replace it with I am worthy. I am enough. When you hear yourself saying it, you got to catch yourself. You have to be conscious enough to know what you're saying. If you're on autopilot and just a zombie all day long, this is going to be tough. You have to start being conscious of everything you're thinking, saying, and doing. So you start saying, I'm worthy. When you hear that voice in your head, so you got twins. You got the good twin, the bad twin living on your shoulder. Okay. And it's like you got their opposites. It's like mountain, valley. Mountain can't exist without valley. Dark can't exist without light. So you have to shift these things. And when you hear the one voice turning on, you got to shift it. All right, turn that volume down. Think of it like a radio station. Your mindset, you're broadcasting your mindset, whether you realize it or not. You're broadcasting this frequency like a radio station. And people that are dialing that in, they're tuning in with their antenna. They don't even realize that they're tuning that in. So you can dial that in. And so realize this is what I'm saying. And so essentially look at your life like this. You got two buckets, the good bucket and the bad bucket. You're filling your thoughts with negative, or you're filling with good. So if I know that I'm constantly filling my bucket with all this negative stuff, I need to battle it. I need to combat it with the opposite of that. So if I constantly say I'm not good enough, so I'm filling this bucket. It's already, by the time I wake up, this bucket's already halfway full. I'm dragging it to practice. My coaches wonder why I'm so exhausted, because I've been dragging my negative bucket all day long. You need to start filling that bucket, the other bucket, with the positive, the I am worthy, And it's going to be hard. You might make a mistake. All you can do is go negative. That's okay. That just tells you where you're at. You need to then force yourself. Okay, I'm worthy. Throw a few positives in. My negative 95% of the time took me day by day. It's like lifting weights every day. You don't think you're seeing something. And then you look back after a couple of years and go, wow, I'm actually like more than 50% positive now. Now I'm like maybe only 5% negative. And when I'm aware of it, it's like a mousetrap. I hear the trap go off. I'm like, okay, where are these limiting thoughts coming from? What's happening? And I attack it like a white blood cell attacks like a virus. So eventually you get to this point where you just like attack any type of negativity in your mindset. And so you got to reprogram that mindset just like a computer operating system. I mean, it's literally just like that. You got to say it, think it, and believe it. So if you're saying all these things, you have to start simply by all those negative affirmations you've been saying. Create that plan. Your new mindset is literally the opposite of what you've been telling yourself all day long. So gather that up and start saying it. It's going to seem silly. You're going to seem weird saying, I am amazing. I can do it. I am capable. It's going to seem off at times, but you got to keep on saying it. That's how you're reprogramming yourself. The awkwardness is where the growth is. The awkwardness is where the growth is. So if I, creating new neural pathways is not easy. Okay. So if I was to say, hey, have one finger pointing and one thumb up, and then flip it and flip it again, flip it quicker, it gets really hard and you can feel kind of stupid doing it. But that is where that awkwardness, I can't stress this enough. Kids don't like feeling awkward. They want to make a mistake. They're going to do something else. They're going to rebel. The awkwardness is where you grow. It's going to be hard telling yourself positive things when you've been so programmed to saying negative for years. It's going to be hard to say those things. So you have to constantly focus on this. So even as a coach, that's why I'm like, hey, balance. I'll just saying the word. Okay. Being aware of the things you're telling yourself. It just becomes a process during practice. It just becomes part of what you do. And then you take those things outside of practice. Let's say they're studying for homework, working at school. You don't think negative thoughts are going to come up with when they get their grades, when they're doing homework, when they're studying for a test. Those same negative things that you uncovered in the area of competition are dragging them down in life and in everywhere else. So if you can do these same things happen. These same tools are effective in sports or outside of sports. So yeah, so you can deal with it in the timeout, or you can deal with it when you're having a tough time on the job or at school. The same things apply. And so that's why you got to constantly keep on creating that new mindset, constantly telling you that new thing that you're telling yourself. And then here's the last letter. It's E. So in my book, I say it's easier than you think. You either keep on doing the same thing, expecting different results, or you do something different and you will get different results. Okay. And so but really the most powerful E is envision. Okay. We all hear like visualization and all this stuff, and visualization is powerful. How often do we really do it? If people maybe they do a few moments here and there, a couple minutes before they go to bed, a couple minutes, during competition. You are doing this every second, whether you realize it or not. You're telling yourself and visualizing and reinforcing this, whether you realize it or not. So you have to change what you're seeing, change that narrative. So you need to envision the person you want to be. So with the create a new mindset, I say it, think it, believe it. With the envision, you have to see it, say it. Here's another thing, feel it and believe it. So I'm going to kind of go into this. It's highly powerful. And this can be done. So I've worked with professional athletes that do this for an hour before they go to bed. They visualize the situation, they visualize the setting, they visualize a complete scenario, and it can be exhausting with the bandwidth to visualize all that. And you can also visualize, like I said, in tennis, I have 25 seconds between points. So you have time to actually go through every letter, break out of limiting mindsets, adjust your reaction, live in the moment, accept it, Newton's third law, create a new mindset, and then envision it. Those 7 steps you can do in 25 seconds. You have time to reset in 25 seconds or in a lifetime. These same steps apply. So the envision is, we all hear about visualization. Oh, okay, great, sure, I'll do it. But you can't just do it without tying the emotion to it. So so with this, you can't just see it, you have to feel it. So let's say because the mind doesn't know the difference. If I'm visualizing it, it doesn't know the difference. So, I mean, there are some people that actually believe in visualization more so than even practice. I'm kind of dabbling in that area, but I understand where they're going with that. But here's the missing step typically of visualization is when we visualize, maybe we're in a negative mindset or we're angry or frustrated. We're now visualizing with that negative mindset attached to that. You have to make sure you shift out of the mindset in a place of balance when you're creating that visualization, because what you have to do is you have to see it, feel it, and say, you don't need to imagine, I got to lift weights 5 days a week, and you're imagining yourself in the weight room. You already imagine your perfect version of yourself. But then what does it feel like? Let's say you want to win the state title, win league, win this match. Doesn't matter what it is. Let's say you want to be the best player ever in the history of the world, or the best coach ever in the history of the world. Doesn't matter. Let's say you have your goal. Okay. When you're visualizing that goal, what feelings would come out with that? What feeling would you have? And what would you do? Let's say you achieved your goal. Would an athlete go and call their parents? Would they call their friend? Would they go and hug their family in the audience? What would they do? And so you need to visualize what that would be like. So you actually need to visualize, getting on the phone, calling your friends. Guess what? I just won state. This happened, and feeling that feeling in your heart. If we just visualize it like we're watching a movie, it does nothing. You're essentially wasting your time. And so these are powerful tools based on how much you're willing to focus. I call it your gas tank. It's your give a S, or give your give an S, SHIT. And so it's literally what's your give a darn level. What are you willing to do with that? So all these steps can help you shift on the court instantly, or can help you shift huge aspects of your life that you don't think you can even wake up in the next morning and deal with. So yeah, so just to kind of circle back, mental health, mental performance, two different topics, but they live together. Mental health impacts mental performance. They go hand in hand. I only know these things because I have experienced and learned how to work my way out of it. I shouldn't be alive now. I shouldn't be alive, and yet I am. And so this message, that's why I'm so passionate about the mindset, the struggles that I've seen, and especially the last couple of years, with talking with other coaches, regardless of sport. We're in a crisis, coaches. We are. And so even just a little tool, even just a little bit of tool, a little bit of guidance and stuff that can help us, can make a huge difference in somebody's life. I mean, it was literally moments from in my life. And if it wasn't for one little thing that happened, one little jump start, as I call it, I wouldn't be here. And maybe all of you can potentially be a jump start to somebody. We play such an important role in people's lives. And we don't even realize the role we play, but coaches' roles are huge. And we also need the tools for ourselves personally to be able to deal with this, because I know it's exhausting for you guys. I know you're worn out. You need tools to help your mental balance, because if you're not in a good place, you can't help your athletes either. And coach burnout is no joke. And so these tools are important for student or athlete or coach. So very thankful. I know we're kind of already at 44 minutes. I could talk about this all day. So I really want to thank everybody that took time to jump on this. And if there's any questions, please reach out, ask away now. But I do work also with teams, individuals, train the trainer thing. Don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do. This is, again, all the things I went through, I used to think, why did I have to go through this stuff? And if I can just help one person that was struggling with these type of things, suicidal ideations, or understanding addiction, why I was an addict and why these things happened, it can be powerful. So I just want to be a resource, and just reach out if there's anything I can do. So with that, I'll just kind of open it up and ask if there's any questions.